Hi, welcome to Art of Academia, a weekly podcast featuring interviews with leading scientists and insider takes on life in academia, hosted by Komal and Madan, researchers from Cancer Science Institute, Singapore.
Hi, welcome to a new episode of Art of Academia.
Season 2.
Yes. What's up? This is the new year.
Yeah, do you want to start with what we did for the New Year's Eve?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so you go first.
Yeah. Initially, I was not gonna travel, but then eventually I did. We went to Langkawi in Malaysia. A bunch of us, like some of my housemates and some other mutual friends. It was activity-wise, it was again like a similar island trip, which is something we discussed last time. And also something I discussed last time was like these trips have become more of spending more time with friends and people than the actual place. It was super nice. We got a car. I think that was the best part about it. So we just hired a car. Did we do that at the airport? No, at the villa. So it was also like a villa situation. Everybody has their rooms and then there's a pool, which was super fun. Very green as well. So we would just every morning, everyone comes down, has some breakfast. Very homely. Like we had peanut butter, bread, sandwiches and fruits and whatnot all set up there.
There was breakfast at the villa?
No, we arranged all of that.
Oh.
We just bought stuff.
Oh, you made it?
We just made very easy things,
Nice.
like just fruits and some, because it was so tiring to eat the fried food there constantly.
Right.
The food there is not so great. So we would just drive up to some place, do island hopping or hike. Hike we actually did not manage to do. We just went up directly. I think a new experience was ATV for me, which is this big ass vehicle. And man, the amount of off-roading I did.
Damn. Also, when you said you went off the road. I thought you were falling off the bike.
No, you can't fall off that thing.
Why not?
It's a huge thing. It's super bulky. You can't
I guess
really fall off from
flat
it.
ground. No, I've been in places where I have fallen off it.
Fair enough. Yeah, but for me, what was happening is just it's a straight road, and I'm crashing into the sides.
What?
Yeah, I was
You don't even have to balance.
I was not able to handle that thing properly. I think it was a bit too stiff, or I have no idea. And
it
then
takes some strength too.
I guess, yeah, and I did not realize that. And initially, I was fine, all excited and whatnot. And on the road only, I am going off on the sides. And then this woman, the other guide, she would always come back and pull me back, and all of that was happening.
She's also on an ATV.
Yeah. So yeah, but I think at one point I really took it a bit too far.
Okay. Wait, explain the layout. What's happening?
So initially we just started on the road. So that was not so great.
The regular road?
Normal road. We are all just on the ATV on normal road. On the side though, on the side. So of course that was not so safe.
Yeah. So this place just gives you the ATV bikes, but they don't have a ranch or anything for you to ride it on. Because the only time I only did it once or twice. Both times it was like a track. They have a track and you ride it on the track.
No, that is how it's supposed to be. So we started on the road and then got into paddy fields and stuff. That was quite nice. Not for me.
Oh.
Just visually it was nice, but I was in the field again and again, and this woman will just come back and get me back on track. But yeah, it was good fun. What else was nice? For New Year's Eve we actually did go to a beach, and there was fireworks everywhere, so that was super nice. And at that night we just sat down, had a little reflection. 2024, what are you guys looking forward to? A very wholesome, chill conversation. Also again, I think something similar to what this guy Taimur was talking about, low optionality, something I was talking to Aishwarya last time, how I also had that with newer members of Pandan this time, because normally we would just meet at hangouts and everyone's doing their own thing, but now you're in this car, you're in this villa for super long, and I got to connect with these people a bit more than I would normally. That was good fun. Yeah.
How many of you were there?
8 of us.
It's a nice, cozy group.
Yeah.
How do we transition?
That was about it for me. And do you have what are you looking forward to in the new year?
In the new year, okay. So, I mean, for our long-term listeners, they might know that I have been kind of bashing on goal setting for the longest time in various different formats. I think even in the last few episodes, this happened quite a bit. And it's the same sort of conundrum. So the bone to pick I have with goal setting is that I guess on one hand, you can't really predict the future with any like degree of accuracy.
Yeah.
That's problem number one. And then I guess the more sort of bigger problem I had with it is you set goals and then a couple of days, weeks into it, you've kind of like lost touch with them, or like I don't know, things have changed. It doesn't feel like inspiring anymore. And then it feels more like a constraint.
Yeah.
Like this has just happened to me over and over so many times that I kind of like gave up on it.
Can you give me an example?
Sure. So let's say, I think, I don't know, 2022 or whenever that was when I made my blog.
Yeah.
The goal was to like write one blog post in a week. And
That is a bit ambitious.
Yeah. So fair enough. Maybe.
Yeah, I think you do start a bit ambitious, like always.
Is it?
Yeah.
Interesting. I mean, that could be it, right?
Yeah.
So I started with that, and it was fine. It was motivating for the first few weeks. Right?
Yeah.
I did that, but then of course eventually that gets very tiring, and then you realize it's not something sustainable. Blah blah blah. You give up.
Yeah.
But this is also kind of true with like less ambitious goals. So I think another one that I have been like recurrently adding is also less important. It's not as important to me, but this is just something which is to take more pictures, right?
Yeah.
And the idea is like just so that it's nice for me to like remember, because generally I have like a very bad memory. But whenever I see a picture of something, it just brings back that
100%,
moment.
yeah. Like I think you only talked about doing a 2024 recap, right?
Yeah.
And I just went back to my gallery, and there's so many things that have happened which I could not think just by sitting by myself.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's super cool.
Yeah, and like something about pictures also, it's like, yeah, there's the picture of that moment itself and you remember that, but it also like brings together stuff that happened around it.
100%, yeah.
Right? I've always been saying, take more pictures, right?
Yeah.
And this has been a goal I set for myself every new year for the past 3-4 years, and I reliably fail. I don't even make it past the first week. Right?
No.
I don't even think it's that ambitious. It's just like take one picture a day. But I think it just goes back to this thing that maybe it just stops being motivating, or maybe I don't like put it somewhere where I'm reminded of it constantly.
Yeah.
For whatever
Yeah.
reason, right? I'm just maybe bad at goal setting. That might be the bottom line. So for that reason, I've like sort of stayed away from it. But that being said, as the new year was like rolling in, the almost craving to set something was like very felt. So I was like, oh, okay, why not? Let's try.
Yeah.
And that's kind of in the zone where I am. I still don't have something very concrete. And I think I still have that like aversion to like very defined goals. But I still like the idea of like thinking about it. And then maybe something will come out of it.
Yeah, I feel that. I think I texted you about this, that how I was not feeling it as much this time. I was just like, I think I've been maybe overdoing it, or like I already have a lot on my plate. But, and I was not going to do the goal setting. I was just going to chill and like just exist. But during New Year, like my PI, we have like a WhatsApp group, my PI and my postdoc mentor, few of us. And he was talking about professional goal setting. He is a very ambitious, like he's a clinician. He is like, go. We gotta like do all these things, grants and milestones and this, that, publications. So he's like on full grind set.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, that you have to be that way, I guess, for such a position. But then he was talking about OKRs. Have you heard of OKRs? Yeah. So initially I was like, well, I'm not sure if I want to do this. But
It's
then
optional.
He said we should, as a lab, create some OKRs, and individually also, for every lab member, have OKRs. And I was like, okay, let me just give it a shot. Like he shared a few
for the
things.
listeners, you should still say what
So
OKRs.
OKRs are O for objective, which you set as one objective, which could be like it's mostly from like corporate world. I think Google started this. For a corporate company, it could be things like, increase profits by 10% or reduce costs by whatever, things like that. And then you also have key results, so which basically just you clearly specify by this time, number one, we would have these many more consumers, or number two, we would have these many more outlets, things like that. And for the research context, of course, it's going to be different. So I still went ahead and did it. And I like just made some general objective and key results. And then I discussed it with my PI on the following day. And then they really helped me like to make it more specific. And like, they were trying to just help me out by how I can actually achieve this kind of key result, or how I can actually go about this particular thing that I'm trying to define. And that was very helpful. I really like that exercise, and that just in general motivated me to do more of this in my personal life as well. So now I have like some clear professional goals for 2025, and I think it's also, in some sense, I am also thinking like this year is work year for me. Like obviously I'm going to do my other things, like nobody's stopping me from that, but I'm really going to focus on getting things out this year. So I think this is very, very nice to have things more clearly laid out. And again, of course, if things don't pan out, it's fine. It's not a very specific goal like, oh, this exact thing I'm going to publish. It's just like, okay, this many manuscripts, first author, co-author, review, whatever is what I want to do. And then, of course, things will change. And another thing that they suggested was that instead of saying, oh, this is my goal for the entire year, break it into chunks.
Yeah.
This is something I think Ali also talks about, quarterly quests and things like that. Because obviously you start off in the year with this crazy motivation, and within a few weeks or months, it drizzles down. But instead of having such a long-term goal, just split it into months. 3 months chunks are sort of ideal, which could be like, okay, within these 3 months, I want to sort of reach this research output, or like at least analyze this much, or like at least start off this much, and then see where things are, and then edit your goals again by the end of that quarter, and keep doing that, keep shifting. So I like that way of goal setting.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's great. And I'm pretty sure it would be, I don't know, I want to talk to somebody who has done this a lot, I guess.
Yeah.
That's my main thing.
Yeah.
Because I've tried stuff like this, maybe not, I don't know if I tried the exact OKR framework. But the issue for me always has been that a couple of weeks in,
Yeah.
right? That when you like, especially when you're setting it, it's kind of like exciting and it's fun.
Yeah.
But for me, what happens is like a couple of weeks in, it just loses that like novelty, that spark or whatever to it.
Yeah.
And it just starts feeling like a bit of a chore. Yeah. And I don't know what's the workaround for it. The other issue is also, like you said, with things like research, it's kind of hard to predict, right? Where your stuff will go.
Course.
So what that makes it is some things just become like defunct. Like maybe that's again me just being bad when it comes to defining these things in the first place. But what would happen is like I've sort of assumed like, okay, this will happen, and then something else has happened, which makes that whole chain kind of redundant.
But that is how you shift gears again, right?
Yeah. So I guess you kind of have to go back, change them.
Yeah.
So then the problem is if they're kind of mutable. If it's not really set in stone.
I think we have discussed this so many times
Have we?
over the pod, like not exactly this, but just the goal setting versus not setting. And I'm just going to say the same thing about, I feel like without a goal, you're like in this paddy field, like in this maze, and you're just like doing Brownian motion.
Yeah.
As opposed to if you have some big goals, you're doing like short, like the zigzag motions towards it, even with like some, I don't know, U-turns and things like that. But still you're trying to reach from start to finish. And again, the finish does not have to be something so damn specific.
Yeah.
It can just be like, I don't know, whatever for you.
Yeah, sure.
Publish something here. Like eventually you might need things like get this grant. Just more general things like that. Of course, you can't define, this is my hypothesis and this research will pan out. You can't do that.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. I guess that's just the consolation that you define maybe like a vague, maybe not vague, but like a accommodating goal, I guess, which accommodates for like all these different failure modes.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Okay, I guess let me know how that goes.
Yeah, I will. I think I have done the OKRs, but I have to add in the specifics now of like, okay, what about this quarter? What about this quarter? And things like that. I would do that in the coming week, I guess, and see how that goes. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Anything new happening?
Anything new happening? Well, yeah, I guess a couple of things. Like, this is not exactly a goal, let's say, because I haven't really done my goal setting for the year. But there have been like some new things that I've been thinking about.
Yeah.
One of them is partly because, not partly actually, 100% because I'm reading this new book, which was Ali's recommendation. It's by this guy called Noah Kagan. It's called $1 Million Weekend or something like this. And it's a business book. The idea is like, how do you kind of build a business and launch it over the weekend? Like, that's the idea. Like, you just, it's not a very like logistical, technical advice kind of book, but like very higher order principles sort of things. And I think it's also kind of marketed towards people who are already thinking about, I want to kind of start a business. But
so are you?
I'll tell you, wait, I come to it. But then they're kind of like feeling some inertia. Like they don't know how, or like they're worried about how this will go. So the whole book is just a bunch of like, it's half self-help in the sense that he's trying to motivate you, but it's also half like some strategies that he has devised. So this guy, he's like a tech guy, but he has launched many businesses over the years. And I think he's kind of like a business mentor now. Like he helps people launch businesses. So this is kind of what he does. So just from his many years of doing this, from his experience, he just has like a few, I don't know, like tricks, whatever you want to call them, like some protocols on how you do this. So for example, how do you come up with business ideas? So he kind of has like a few steps you can take to generate like your first list of 10 ideas that you want to like sieve through.
Oh, cool.
So just that level stuff.
Yeah.
It's a nice book. I won't say it's super good. It has some elements of cringe in it. I think all of these like popular books kind of have to have it to appeal, I guess, to a broader audience.
Exactly.
And there's also quite a bit of like shilling. Like I can't set aside that part of me that says, oh yeah, this is like a grift, because that I'm sure he has something on his, like he's selling some course somewhere that says how to make a business. Like it's not an entirely 100% purely, what's the word for this? Charity, not charity. Like a...
I understand.
Right? Like there's something he gains by putting this out in the world.
Correct.
So you have to keep that in mind while you listen as well.
Yeah.
But I think even setting all that aside, I think it's still a good book. Like it's very short. He doesn't like, take too much time to make his points.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah.
He gets to it and he's very candid about it. Like he's very open. It's just like a chat.
Nice.
So that part I liked. And coming back to it, so yeah, reading that book, I was like, oh, this will be cool.
Yeah.
Like, this will be some fun thing to try. And what I liked about it is like, at least the way he pitches, is that you can test your ideas without spending any money. So the whole thing about this million dollar weekend thing is you kind of get started and then you test your idea within those 48 hours to see whether it works or not. And then this does not really take any capital, or that's the way he advises you to think about things, to do this in a way that you don't really have to invest money, you don't really have to like build a fancy website, whatever. It's more about like coming up with some ideas, finding like some potential customers, and at least
like you're doing a thought experiment, or you're actually doing something out there.
You do something out there, but not in the sense of like building something and shipping it. I mean, I only made like halfway through, so I don't know what comes later on. But it seems it's more about get an idea, refine that idea, think about how you'll price it, whatever. And his sort of focus is on like finding the initial customers. So I think he says like find 3 or 10 people, reach out to them, tell them about your product, and see if they will pay you. And it's better if they will already pay you. Like, can you be like, okay, this is the service I'm going to provide, or this is the product I'm selling. Would you be excited? If yes, send me this money now, and then I will give you the product in a few days. So he really does it in such a way that you find if this is a thing that can make you money.
Yeah.
And if yes, then you build on it. I think I'm curious in those first part itself, where is there some idea that I can come up with that people would like be happy to pay for? We'll see. I'm still in the idea generation.
No, that's cool. Very exciting stuff.
The other thing also kind of in the background, which has been also in the background for a long time, but I haven't acted upon it, is should I start a YouTube channel? Right, something I've always wanted to do, but held back by just the perceived amount of effort, which is a decent amount, right? You have to record, you have to learn how to edit.
Yeah.
That's been holding me back. And this kind of comes back every year, at the beginning of every year.
What would this channel be about?
It's just going to be a complement to my blog and the podcast. So there are things that it's just more convenient to put through video. So let's say I'm like kind of doing like a tutorial. Like I've like kind of written up some code projects over time, right? So there's this thing where I'll give you an example. So I use Notion for taking notes.
Yeah.
The other popular notes one of the other popular notes app is called Obsidian or Rome. And the difference between what they're popular for is they have this thing called a knowledge graph. So each node exists as a node.
Yeah.
And then these nodes are connected together by a line, right? And what this allows you to do is allows you to very visually see all the links between your different nodes. And this is cool, right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes you can link notes organically, like the ideas
In
you
ways
thought
you
were
would not think
disconnected
by yourself. Yeah.
but the visualization kind of helps you to like put it together, and then this way you also see how like similar ideas cluster together. So it's
Right.
very, very popular. People
Right.
love that.
Yeah.
But that feature does not exist in Notion.
Notion,
I love for absolutely everything else.
Yeah.
And that single feature was not enough to let me convert. So I still stay with Notion. So what I did, just looked up if there are like any libraries that do this like graph
Clustering,
generation.
yeah.
And then I just have a option where you take your Notion database and you plot it with that library. So that gives you now a knowledge graph for your Notion notes.
Oh, nice.
Very simple.
Yeah.
It works.
Yeah.
I never put it out there. I only use it for myself. But I thought mainly because it's kind of a pain to have that as a tool that works for everybody. But it's very easy if you did it yourself. I don't know. Maybe that's a business idea. We'll come back to.
You just let it out.
Yeah. But that if to show someone how to do it, that would require me to like go through my kind of like show them my screen, right? Walk you through it, and these things are like you can't
Much
do on a
easier
podcast,
on,
and even
video,
on a blog, it's just tedious. It's just
100%,
way
yeah.
simpler if it's
Yeah,
on video.
you can just see it. Yeah.
Exactly, and there's other things that fall in this domain. Like there are just some things that are better on video, and that's it. That's what this YouTube channel would.
Then why not? Like, why don't you start off? Lack of time?
The time, it's a little bit of the commitment, and it's I guess there is like some initial starting off inertia, right? And I'm also thinking a little bit about production quality, a little bit about editing.
Yeah.
Like, don't want to make that super basic. So maybe that's
you can
just the
have a
consolation.
few, like 4 or 5 as a bulk to like push you off, to start you off. Do the initial benchmarking before launching the channel.
Yeah.
You have reached your whatever quality you want, and then you start the channel and then start posting slowly and then see how it's getting received.
Yeah. I think
It's like also given the blog and podcast, you have already been out there and you know it doesn't really matter. Like, of course, if somebody sees it, it's great, and it would be nice if someone gets value out of it. But even if not, then at least you have done it.
Yeah, no, that my worry is not that nobody will see it. I know nobody's going to see it. Okay, so today wanted to talk about this cool paper that I found. It was published in Nature Human Behavior 2024. Did you know about this journal?
No.
I did not also.
Yeah. Seems like a newish journal.
I
When did this come about? 2017.
Oh, damn. Interesting. Yeah, I don't know about the rest of the journal, but I don't know if it's like psychology focused, but this one was kind of cool.
Impact factor 30.
Yeah, impact was high. Nature guy, I guess.
I know not all nature journals are that high, but I mean, I guess it makes
Generally,
sense.
if you don't include scientific reports and all that.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, the cool thing was why I liked it for a couple of reasons.
Yeah.
This paper, I guess, falls into this domain of science, which is called science of science, I think. I don't know, at least these authors like to call it that, the main author. But the broad idea is basically that they track or they analyze like trends in science and then try to do like some higher level thinking and that could have impact on like policy decisions, right? Like
Right.
how do we want to think about this? How do we want to plan or like steer it towards directions that we want, towards outcomes we want?
Yeah.
Which I thought was nice. And I liked it for a couple of reasons. One, all of this information is, I guess, publicly available, right? You have all this data about who's working on what, who's publishing, and this is kind of open information. So what I liked about it is like anybody can kind of just access this and then start digging into this for themselves, which is the cool bit. Okay, so the paper itself, I haven't said the title, it's called Limited Diffusion of Scientific Knowledge, Forecasts Collapse.
I wonder how much the pretense spoke to you.
A lot. I really liked the language that they used in this paper. That's one big reason also. When I read the abstract, I was like, ooh, this sounds cool, right? So this is written by Dong-Yung Kang, and it's from the corresponding author is James A. Evans. So these guys are from this lab called Knowledge Lab. I was kind of looking them up.
Oh.
It's actually a big institute. It's bigger than, at least in terms of number, it's bigger than CSI, for example.
Interesting.
And it looks
What are they doing?
Yeah, it looks like they all sort of work on these kind of questions of like looking at...
That entire institute?
Yeah.
That's so
I mean,
cool.
there's a little bit of AI and all that,
Sure.
right? But overall, it seems like it's a lot about looking at how the science of science stuff that we talked about.
Very
They are
interesting.
doing those kinds of things. And there's actually...
Where is it?
This is in University of Chicago, USA.
Right here, yeah.
And I mean, they seem to be publishing well. There's the human behavior, there's nature comms, PNAS, cool stuff. And it looks like they're doing a lot also. It's not like this one-off rare papers.
I see.
Okay, so let's get into the paper itself. So here, the whole idea, as the title suggests, which again is limited diffusion of scientific knowledge forecasts collapse, they look at papers, and let's say you have now a paper and you can access who all are citing this paper. And there are these citations, they change over the years. They may increase or decrease over time, and this I guess is fairly normal, but they introduce this new element called diffusion, which is something they define in their methods. But diffusion is basically a measure of where are the citations coming from. Are they all coming from like a very narrow network of scientists who are all closely related, which would mean that's very low diffusion, versus your citations are coming from many different groups who are working across different fields. That would be a very high diffusion.
Right.
So they basically have this metric. They incorporate that along with how the number of citations are changing over the years, and then this lets you now look at basically after the paper has come out how it's doing over the years, like how it's being perceived. Is it still of interest, or is this something that came out and now it's
there was
forgotten?
Like an initial hype which has drizzled down now.
But yeah, maybe we can talk about the two specific examples they have, because I think that puts some clarity to the concepts.
Yeah, so the first so they talk about contrasting trajectories of two research papers, and here they take the first example of this work from Anversa's lab, where they sort of discovered the presence of heart stem cells which can be regenerated. So this seems like very revolutionary. Now you have this subset of cells which you can use for people who have lost some heart cells from several reasons like infarction, etc. So initially it seemed to be a very cool idea and had a lot of citations in the early years. But a few things to note here are that this guy, he also sat on a lot of editorial boards and like some high positions which have influence on citations, acceptance of papers, what gets funding, things like that. So already fishy. And then eventually different teams tried it and the results did not hold true. So that resulted in some retractions from this big team.
Yeah, it says it's more than 30 papers were retracted.
That is insane.
That is crazy.
From like big journals. Like of
network.
course, if something is coming up in like a I think
NEJM. Yeah, that's as big as you get, right?
Exactly. It's like the biggest biology, like medical research journal. And yeah, something getting retracted from that is huge, I guess. So that is one example. And again, looking at the two metrics that you defined. So one is the scientific diffusion, which means how many types of scientific fields are citing this initial finding. And also the social diffusion, which is how many different types of networks of scientists across the world are citing this paper. So for this paper, initially there were very high citations, but as time went on, the diffusion did not change. And then they compare this with this other paper, which also came in around 2000s, which was about, which basically discovered immune checkpoint blockade therapy. So just some background. In the immune system, there are cells which act and go and kill, for example, cancer cells. And then there are also breaks, which stop some immune cells from acting. And these guys found out that if you break these breaks, you can actually push on and like activate the immune response. So this is very, like, of course, again, very cool, very interesting and groundbreaking to start off with. But as compared to the previous one, this field, this topic, I think initially did not start off as crazily in terms of the absolute citations. But as time went on, the paper says, according to their metric, that it was diffused more, both in the scientific score, scientific diffusion metric, as well as in the social diffusion metric. And we also see this in real time, right? Like in conferences, etc. There's so much about ICB, immune checkpoint therapy, which I think is sort of based off of that initial seminal paper.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, although like you said from the graph, it's hard to see the diffusion change, but it's very clear, at least to see the citations change, right?
Yeah.
You can see that for
100%.
the cardiac stem cell paper, that really is like a rapid drop in the number of citations going from 10 to 15 years maybe. Whereas for the cancer immunotherapy paper, it's like a slow but steady sort of
Growth.
increase.
Yeah.
Which suggests that I guess that's something solid.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, so they basically do these 2 case studies, but then they also kind of do a broader analysis, do this with many papers. So for this, they I guess take a sort of a framework that was developed by a different paper early on, who had looked at about 28,000 biomedical subfields. They looked at a bunch of papers and they classified them into fields.
Yeah.
So there is the seed sort of paper that started off a field, and then all these papers that link to them.
Right.
And they have sort of curated them to so many 28,000 subfields.
Clusters, yeah.
And then now they apply this analysis to those subfields. And I've been very the straightforward main finding to say from that is what they see, if people are looking at the figure, which is very unlikely, they have a Kaplan-Meier curve, and actually I don't even want to describe it, I'll just tell the finding. Yeah, so the main finding here is that basically diffusion is correlated with survival. So the more diffused your paper is, the less likely, or your subfield is, the less likely it is to collapse or to burst in bubble.
Yeah.
So it's particularly obvious for the bottom 5% of bottom 0.5% of all these subfields in terms of diffusion. So the least diffused papers, their survival probability drops rapidly as the field ages.
Yeah.
But if you look at papers that are very, very diffused, or actually even just moderately diffused, their survival is quite is quite decent. They don't really tend to collapse.
Yeah.
So I guess as a scientist, the most interesting takeaway for this is if you now go and check whatever field you're working on, what is its, I guess, diffusion metric, and then how the broader interest of the scientific community is in your field. I thought that would be something interesting to look it up.
Yeah, I think right after reading this paper, when I did it for the first time, I went to PubMed and I just started Googling several fields that I've been working on, and just the general plot that they have of citations with time.
Yeah. The rest of the paper, I think, is just, this is the most figure 3, figure 4 I've ever seen after finding after a main result, right? This is the most added on to figures I've seen. But I guess very, very, very briefly, what they found is let's say you are now looking at these collapsed fields. So fields that started off with attention, but then over time it just stopped. Nobody else was continuing in that field. One thing that is kind of interesting and very, very pertaining if you are entering a collapsed field is this figure 3, where they show that the first people, the earlier entrants who come to these fields, they have relatively higher publications. But the people who come after them, if really this is a collapsed field, their citations are significantly lower. And this could indicate that they started something which might not be real or might not be substantial. And the people who followed up either failed to replicate it or just did not have that many interesting leads to follow up on. So that's, I guess, quite concerning if you're a new scientist and you're trying to enter a new field. You just want to make sure that it's not a bubble. And similarly, there's another thing outside of the pure just looking at citation counts, which is if you looked at the number of grants received. So for these collapsed subfields, if you define a year as, okay, this is the year this field collapsed, in the previous years, if you go back up to 15 years, on average, that's quite good. You're getting on average 1 to 3 grants or something, right? But after collapse, that drops quite rapidly. So even you lose funding for these fields, which makes sense. If nobody's publishing, I guess you're not really going to get any grants for this. So I guess this whole paper is just a little bit of a nice little reminder that if you're thinking about entering a new field, or maybe you even are in a field and you just don't know this yet, but it might be worthwhile to check
Am I in a bubble?
Yeah, are you in a bubble? What's the broad scientific community's interest in your field?
Yeah.
And I think, okay, one thing, one caveat I might add here is perhaps popularity is not the only metric you care about. Maybe you are really in some sort of esoteric field that nobody else is working on, but it could be an important problem. So I guess that's something you should acknowledge.
Right.
But I guess, to be fair to the authors, they are really more focusing on topics that get a lot of attention in the beginning, and then it's headed towards collapse.
Yeah. I think when I was looking at the PubMed citation plots for whatever field, if we are trying to like use any of the ideas from this paper, I think we can just see if the plot is either stable or going high, then yeah, great. Or like even lower citations to start with, but the most concern is if it actually had a high number till like a few years ago and it's dropping now, which I did see for like a few of the topics that I am already working on. I'm not sure if it will really change things for me, but definitely good to know as you are like navigating through time.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's quite cool. Even I haven't done it still, but I think I would like to. I'm actually even curious to just calculate the diffusion for a couple of my papers. They haven't really done a tool, but the implementation seems not too complicated, so I might try it. But yeah, if that fails, at least the citation thing I want to do.
Just check 100%. The citation. Yeah, that's super easy. And like if you have a niche topic, niche field, you can get a grasp of what's happening.
Yeah, it also exposed me to, I guess, some of these papers or like platforms that host this information in the first place. So PubMed, like you said, I mean, I've always used it, but just like realizing that they also have like these databases where you can do sort of high throughput analysis is interesting.
Yeah,
I feel like that would like unlock things that you don't get by just like
see just by looking at stuff. Text.
Yeah, just to link this back to the earlier conversation about business ideas, one of his like suggestions, one of Noah Kagan's suggestions to like actually check if you have a market for something is to go on like Google Trends and then search. So if you're thinking about, I don't know, making like, I'm just going to use his example, making a new beard oil company, he just recommends that you go on Google Trends and then see how often itchy beard was searched. Right, because that's the main thing beard oil is solving. And then if you find that in whatever area you are, not many people are searching, that probably means it's not a great idea.
Yeah, you don't not an actual issue in this location.
Yeah, but if you have millions of people searching that, then it's a good suggestion.
Yeah, I mean, of course, we are part of this entire network. It's good to see what's actually happening instead of working in your individual bubble now.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times it happens, right? You're looking at data, you're like, oh, this looks interesting. What about this gene or whatever? And then nobody in the world has looked at it ever. Yeah. And then you're like, shall I like, do a dive in? And then you obviously spend some time. In those situation scenarios, it's good to just check this.
True. And also very, very cool if you're thinking about starting new things, I guess. Then you should really, really think about this
100%,
stuff.
Yeah. Because also, like, as I was mentioning to you, like, personally, not on the pod, not on this pod, is grant writing.
Yeah. Oh,
again,
true. So true.
You're starting something so fresh, you want to get money. It has to be interesting enough for them to be like, yeah, this seems like it has impact. It has some adding to the field.
Yeah, somebody has to care about it, right?
Yeah. So in those, but you also don't want to be doing something super competitive, super common, because again, then it's just too much competition.
Yeah.
And somebody else will just find it anyway. So what's the point?
Very true.
Yeah, I think this is also very useful for funding bodies, more so than like individual researchers, because they're obviously letting out so much money and predicting that is difficult.
Yeah, that's
where the money should be placed.
That's actually very true. Yeah, if I were somebody making decisions, or at least I hope the people making decisions are like kind of using something like this, trying to be a bit more quantitative in the decisions that they make.
Yeah, a bit more informed than just, these people are on the panel and they work on this.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought very cool, I liked it because, I don't know how much effort it was to actually do the method and implement it, but I liked the fact that this is a relatively straightforward / simple thing that has some like potentially big implications.
Yeah.
Like you did not have to go through like years of experimentation to have this result, right?
Yeah.
It takes a good idea takes data that's already available and then turns that into like a nice narrative with some impact.
Yeah.
Which I think is a cool
They
thing.
did not put this out as a tool though, right? They have
No,
not.
it's not as a tool.
Yeah. I wonder why not though. Like if they have worked so much, why not just like make it into a small tool that people can use?
I don't know if they've made the data available, because I guess once it's done, right? Like it's calculated on all those subfields. But yeah, I don't think they made it as a tool for sure.
I would like to see how they have reported their supplementary data. You know, like can I now just search a field of interest and see its diffusion score for at least the ones, like the popular ones? Because I think it's over 20,000 subfields, right?
Yeah.
So most likely your field of interest might be there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I
That's
just
what
want to
was thinking
see.
too.
I just want to see how it's deposited.
Okay, close off. I guess just wanted to talk about some side project that I've been working on. So the idea behind this came from, I guess, partly just wanting to. Okay, I don't know how much context I want to give for this. I don't wanna
Go for it.
ramble for too long.
I mean, it's fine. I can cut it out.
Yeah, I know. Okay, so basically, there was some frustration perhaps of doing a bunch of things that basically gets maybe no attention, right? That's one problem, one way to think. I mean, it's not that you should not do it, but like there are just so many things that I do, which is like, so let's take research. It's like you sink in all this work and then you get some feedback from your mentor and then maybe from your lab mates, but that's about it, right? It does not get put out until a considerable amount of work has been done. It has to be packaged and sent in. So you don't really get like a lot of feedback or satisfaction from outside sources from that. And the pod and the blog post that I do, also a bit of the same problem, but at least it goes out. It's much more,
The
frequent.
feedback loops are faster.
It's faster.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we also don't get a lot of feedback, right? We don't have a ton of listeners, or we don't get like a lot of comments on it.
Sure.
There's a few, right? So this just came from, okay, can I build something that people will actually use, right? And then you get some feedback, and then that would be like kind of satisfying, I guess. So that was the idea.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking from. And at the same time, actually, I asked a bunch of people for some ideas. So just through this like workshopping, I had this idea of, okay, why not it's the new year, right? Everybody is kind of thinking about, defining goals and like doing some sort of like, get your shit together kind of thing. So why don't you just build like a task manager basically? But I wanted to do that in a social setting because I think that's kind of missing for me at least. Usually it's like a very private affair, right? You write it down somewhere, you track that yourself. And then that's fine, but I thought it would be just nicer to do that with some accountability, with the social angle. So my idea was we just build a Telegram bot for it. So we have like a group chat, the bot with a couple of our friends, and the bot also sits there. And it's very simple. Each day you just start by defining your main task for the day, and I wanted to keep it as just like a simple one task thing because again, I feel it'll be a bit tedious if everybody's like putting their entire task list. You don't care about
There's
that.
no
right?
point,
And plus also the other side of this is like it's nice and clarifying in one way.
100%.
You just define like one
This
main
is the
thing
one thing that I'm gonna do today.
Right? If nothing else that gets done, if you do this, you'll be happy. What's that task? So just give me that. So that's what happens. People define their tasks, and then the bot tracks it for you. And at the end of the day, it'll just give you a little summary of who all finished it. And then who did it. Very simple bot. Built it over like maybe a couple of hours. Total hours.
It did not take so long. How hard was the coding?
Total, I might say maybe 10 hours.
Okay.
Including everything. 10 to 15 perhaps. Yeah. So actually
How do you integrate it to Telegram?
I can give you a bit of the background. So Telegram has this API. API just means like application program interface. So they have done sort of all the hard work of allowing you as a programmer to interact with their app programmatically, right? And they expose this API, and so you can just talk to it. So there are like certain commands you can give, which will cause it to like act in a certain way. And they also have an API for building a bot. So it's very simple. And you can talk. I think by native you do it through HTTP, but you can also do it through like R or through Telegram. So I do it through R. There's a package. You download the package. You have to go through some basic steps of like setting up a bot, and it's all documented. It's quite easy to follow through.
Yeah.
And I also use ChatGPT extensively,
of course,
right, to get everything in place.
Yeah.
And then once it's set up, it's very simple. The only thing you have to do is like there's like you can set up ways in which if a user says something, you get the bot to give you this response. Or if you want the bot to do something, you can set it up. I guess this is very abstract when I say it like this.
I get the gist, yeah.
Yeah. So the bone infrastructure is very simple, and you can just get it off of these sort of documentation that's available. And then whatever programming you want to do. So what you do with the responses, you write that yourself. Like, so if in this case, everybody's giving me a task, right? I just put that into like a data frame.
Yeah.
And then when somebody says they have done it, just mark it as complete, and that's stored. So this way, I haven't actually shown you guys, but this way we can actually track it over time, right? So maybe in 10 days, I'll hit you with a summary.
Ooh.
Who all did, or who all said they would do and didn't finish.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I think I really like this idea because, again, as you mentioned, it's the new year. Everybody's trying to do, just being more productive and stuff. And I also thought that as we will go on with this, people will keep on sharing their tasks.
Yeah.
And these are things that you might not normally talk about.
Yeah.
It could just be something scientific even, where I'm just like, oh, I'm going to do this analysis, or you just be like, oh, I'm going to do this experiment, whatever. And then that's another talking point for a research discussion, which is quite nice, yeah. Just sneak peek into people's days.
A little bit, right? Yeah. And this is already happening, I guess. People are like getting traffic fines.
Yeah.
People are going shopping. Yeah, it's quite nice. I like the social element of it. That makes it fun. And right now I've only made it so that it works with the one group that we have it on. But it should not be actually that difficult to scale it up. So if I wanted to just make this available to the public as well, I think quite easy to do.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Do you have any future plans for this, or we just gonna go with it and see how it goes?
I think for me, maybe I will see how interesting this actually is, right? So this is sort of the pilot. We'll see how long we use it.
Yeah. I mean, of course, we are talking about daily things.
Yeah, exactly. So if it is fun, people are showing interest. Already, my friend mentioned that somebody they know is interested in trying it, right? So there seems to be some demand. I think it's a cool idea.
Nice.
So yeah, I will like set it up for sure. That's easy. Yeah, so we'll see if it takes off. It takes off.
Yeah, very cool.
Cool. What else? That's all right.
Yeah.
Just end it abruptly in a typical ending fashion.
I'll keep that.